Awesome. Hey, everybody. Hey, Miriam. Okay. Whew, this is very exciting. All right, hold on. This is my first time running one of these on Facebook Live and Zoom at the same time. So bear with me if I accidentally kick everybody off or you suddenly can't see me halfway. It is recording, so I will be able to pop this up here at some point in time. How do I mean, I know I'm beautiful, but I kind of just want to see myself. All right, perfect. Let me hop over here. Good. All right, I can see everybody. Our chat should be working here. Let me just make sure. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat as we go. This is great. Welcome today. I'm so excited. This is a really fun Q&A session. I had a lot of questions come in about cameras, and hence I now have pages and pages of information that I'm going to share with you. So if I'm looking at my information a lot, it's just because I don't want to miss anything. So bear with me on this one. I don't have any slides for you today, which is very exciting for me because I kind of like just talking, which is great because, you know, I can talk the socks off everybody, right? So I have lots of wonderful information and I am really excited because also today, at the end of today, I am going to be sending out, probably not instantly because it's not quite finished yet, but I'll be sending out a sort of a really helpful PDF guide on buying cameras. It should have like a whole workflow in there for you so that you guys can fill in the details based on what you want and what your preferences are. And then you should be able to go from there. So this is very cool. And thank you all for joining me live. This is really great. So yeah, I always kind of like it when people are actually here. It makes me feel much less lonely. So thanks for taking the time out of your day. So I'm going to get started because I don't want to waste any of your time. And I'm expecting this to run about the half an hour-ish mark. We'll see how we go. All right. But if you have any more questions, just pop them in the chat. If I can't answer them today, just because, you know, world of camera purchasing is pretty damn big. So if I can't answer them today, what I'm going to do is loop back with you once I have figured out all of the most important information to answer your question properly. So let's kick this off. We're looking at camera purchases today, and I want to make this really clear. We're going to stay away from lenses because lenses is a whole nother ball game that we will cover in a totally different live session here, okay? But what I want to do today is I want to talk about purchasing a camera. So as we go today, guys, feel free just to pop in there what kind of camera you want. What kind of camera you have in one of the chats, doesn't matter where you are. Pop in there what camera you have and what your dream camera is, because I just want to see, and I think it's really fun for everybody else to see, sort of what we're dreaming of. What is our sort of goal here? So my current camera, I shoot with a Nikon D750, and my dream camera is actually the Nikon Z6. And we're going to get into what that is in a little while and why it's my dream camera and why I also can't afford to buy it right now. So we've got lots of really cool stuff coming away. So when I was going through the questions that were submitted to us, one of the biggest things that came out was this. Do I spend more money on a body and less money on lenses, or do I spend more money on lenses and less money on the body? Okay. Now, this is a really, really fantastic question, but what it implies here is that there's a trade-off, that you can't have good quality on both sides unless you have lots of money, right? You're either getting a good quality body and less quality lenses, or you're getting a better quality lenses with a less quality body. So what I'm going to do here on this question, it's a really big question. I'm going to throw my 2 cents worth in here. Okay. So this is kind of how it goes. Now, remember, this is my opinion. Okay. And if you guys when you start researching online, because that's where I'm going to send you afterwards, when you guys start doing your research online, you will likely find that there are lots of differing opinions about this. Okay. But I would like for you to stick with me and hear through my reasoning, because I actually think, you know, I think it's pretty valid, but I do want to make sure that you know that this is just my opinion, right? Perfect. You're right, Lorraine. It is definitely a Nikon 750, not a 705, but I love that camera. It's still my favorite one of all time. So that's awesome. Oh, good, Joan. I'm going to give you some great dream cameras because you have the 3300. Yeah, you're totally ready for an upgrade on that one, but I'll tell you why. All right. So let me break down my opinion on this. So when it comes to purchasing camera equipment, I highly believe in buying for the future, okay? If you guys get into photography, this is going to become one of those lifelong passions that you're never going to be able to put down, okay? So what I want you guys to consider is this. I want you to buy less, but better quality right now. And here's the reason why. what's going to happen is that over time, your finances would grow. That's the theory of life anyway, right? We will have more money as time goes on. And what's going to happen is that we're going to be able to expand our horizons on what we can buy. So if you're buying poorer quality stuff now, that means that you have to upgrade everything in the future. Whereas if we're buying less things now, less but better quality things now, it means that that's a system that we can grow with as we go. So before we get into the camera purchases, this is my very first tip for you. Don't buy anything until you learn the foundations of how to use your camera. Okay, because it doesn't matter if you spend $500 on a camera at that point. It doesn't matter if you're spending $10,000 on a camera. You're not going to get the quality of the photos that you want if you don't know how to use the camera. It's never going to be able to output the quality of the image that you want if you don't know how to use it. It doesn't matter how expensive it is, right? So if you only have a point and shoot with you right now, or if you only have an iPhone camera, then, and you're just starting out, all right? So I know a lot of you guys on the call today, you guys have taken a couple of courses, you guys have learnt the foundation. So this probably isn't for you, but if you are watching this in a replay and you are just starting out, here's my suggestion. Buy the entry-level Nikon or camera system. So for the entry-level Nikons, you're looking at the 3000 series. So it's like D3000 to, I think they're up to D3600. I could be wrong on that. And then, or you can buy the Canon series, which is their Rebel. I think they're up to the T7i now. But you could buy an older model Rebel as well, right? And if you buy these with just the simple 18 to 55mm kit lens, so it's just the basic kit that you can buy from London Drugs or any camera store, it's going to set you back sort of $500 to $600. If you buy it secondhand, which I highly suggest in the very beginning, you could spend as little as $200 on this, okay? So when you're just starting out, you don't need very much to figure this out, okay? You do not need a fancy camera system, and a simple entry-level system with an entry-level lens will get you right on board with your first photography classes that will help you to understand how to use your camera and then what you're looking for in a better camera, right? The best part is that once you've finished with this, once you've done your foundational learning, so this is before you do any other kind of learning, but once you've done your foundational learning, what you can do then is you can sell that camera and then upgrade, right? So if you're buying the camera for, you know, the entire kit lens new for 600, you'll be able to sell it for 400 because you won't keep it for that long. Or if you're buying it for 200, you'll be able to sell it for 150. And what if you lost $50 in the process of learning how to use your camera, right? Pretty damn cool. So trust me when I say in the beginning, invest in your learning first before you go and buy expensive camera gear, because you will regret it. You will learn more about your camera and you'll be like, gosh, dang, I wish I had have just waited for a little bit longer until I knew, you know, X, Y, Z about my camera. I knew what aperture was. I knew what shutter speed was. I had an understanding of what I really needed in a camera. All right. Aylin, I totally hear you. Aylin just mentioned on chat, she said, I don't understand what all the Nikon numbers mean. Yeah, I totally get it. And Don, you still have your 600. That's still one of the best cameras out there, I swear. All right. Just making sure I don't have any comments I've missed. Okay, perfect. So that's my first tip. If you're just starting out, buy cheap, learn the foundations, and then go and see where you're going to put your money. So now we've got that out of the way. Let's go and talk actual camera purchases for you guys here who know the basics already. So these are for people if you understand your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed, and you know just enough to get into lots and lots of trouble. Right? You don't have to be professionals. You do not have to understand these things inside out, but I do want you guys to be feeling comfortable using aperture priority and sort of dabbling with manual, or at least feel like you could work your way through a shot in manual mode, even if it's not fast, right? Okay, here's my suggestion for you. Buy a really good quality camera body, all right? And we're going to talk about this first. Sorry, let me just get my notes organized here. All right. Perfect. So let me just go over this again. I want you guys to think about buying a really good camera body, and we'll get into what options you have available to you for that. But if you have, say, $3,500 to spend, right? So this is your total amount, okay? This is your amount to spend on this right now. Okay, and I want to make that really clear because eventually as time goes on, you will be able to find more money for your photography passion, right? So you've got $3,500 to spend right now. Now, if you put $2,000 of that into a really good quality camera system, and there are lots of really good camera bodies for $2,000, you could buy some incredible bodies, really good stuff, right? If you spend $2,000 on that, you still have $1,500 to spend on lenses. That's a lot of money, and that can buy you 1 or 2 really good quality lenses, like, I mean, top of the line lenses that will last you for a decade. This whole system, this one camera body and those 1 or 2 lenses could last you for the next 10 years. But you're assuming that over the next 10 years, you don't get any more money to spend, which is kind of not true, right? So as time goes on, maybe in 2 years' time, you have another $1,000 come in the door, and then suddenly you get to spend $1,000 more on that spectacular lens that goes with your spectacular body. Okay, so my suggestion is always invest in a really good foundational body and then deal with having just one lens. If you just have one really good quality lens, then you're already better off than having a less good quality body and a really good quality lens, because eventually you're just going to have to upgrade that body. Okay, so this is kind of my philosophy on buying this. So now when we get to this, let's have a look at what camera bodies are out there to us. So there are basically 2 different sort of things that you need to consider. The first thing you're going to consider is, are you going to buy crop sensor or full frame? The second thing you're going to buy is, you're going to buy a traditional DSLR or mirrorless system. So let's go into crop sensor versus full frame for now. All right, so what's the difference? So if you've taken a course with this, then we will have likely explained this very quickly to you, and I will explain it very quickly again, okay? So the difference between a crop sensor and a full frame sensor camera is that sensor size. Now, a sensor is the thing that actually records the image that we're taking, and it's the most expensive part of the camera to manufacture, okay? So a full frame camera body has a full frame sensor size. A crop sensor body has a cropped sensor size. So it's about 2/3 the size of a full sensor. Why does this matter? Well, if you can imagine this, you've got a full frame sensor inside your body. You're already capturing more light, right? That's just the reality of it. So a full frame body is going to take crisper photos. You will use less ISO, right? Because you're already capturing more light onto your sensor. So you won't need to play with your ISO in darker settings as much, okay? And typically these cameras come with a way better what's called noise reduction engine, which means that as you increase your ISO, it's less noisy. It's not as noisy as it could be, right? Remember, noise, when we're talking about ISO, is the graininess of your photo, right? So we want to have the least amount of ISO possible and the best ISO engine. Okay. Ron, totally not just a Nikon. Well, we have lots of Canon lovers here as well, so you're in good company. And I'm talking about all cameras today, not just mine. Granted, I do shoot with a Nikon, so I have, you know, pretty good experience with that, but I've also had Canons in my world before too, and they're great. So anyway, going back to this. So full frame sensors. Now, a full frame sensor also is where, right, it also affects the view of our photo as well, okay? So a full frame camera, when you put a lens on a full frame camera, it's actually what the focal length of the lens is, okay? So it's actually, if you put a 35mm on a full frame camera, you're actually seeing a 35mm. If you put a 35mm on a crop sensor, then what you're actually seeing is, because that sensor size is smaller, you're actually seeing a slightly zoomed photo, okay? So a 35mm is closer to a 50mm on a crop sensor camera. Now, a couple of other things. Crop sensor cameras are lighter because our sensor is quite heavy, and what happens is that we have a lot more mechanics around the body to create a full frame lens, a full frame camera, sorry. So what's happening is that crop sensors are smaller and lighter, right? And cheaper, which is fantastic. But generally full frame cameras are better quality. You've got a better selection of high quality lenses to go with them, but they are a lot more expensive and they're generally a lot heavier. So we have kind of a trade-off going on here. So my suggestion is this, is that if you're loving photography and you're thinking this is gonna be it, like, man, if I could ever have a passion, photography is the one. Go with a full frame camera. Really take the time, invest in a good quality full frame camera, and you're going to be happy for the rest of your life, right? If you're sort of like, I love this and it's really great, but also I really want something that's compact. I travel a lot, or maybe you don't want to be carting around a lot of heavy gear. Maybe you hike a lot. Invest in a good quality crop sensor, because they are still really good, okay? Or if you're on a super tight budget, crop sensors are the way to go, okay? Because they are beautiful quality, they're cheaper, they're smaller, they're lighter, all right? I think that most of you are probably going to end up along the road of a full sensor camera based on the people I'm seeing here today. Okay. So I'm thinking probably, oops, sorry, my coat. Here, let me just take it off because it was like freezing cold in here before, but it shouldn't be anymore. Thanks for that, Miriam. All right, perfect. And Lexi too. Yeah. Okay. So if you're in any way, shape or form in love with photography, just go and buy a full frame camera. It's genuinely going to make the difference in your photography. All right, the second consideration is, do you buy a traditional SLR or a mirrorless system? Now, this is a really interesting question too, okay? So how does this work? So a full frame SLR camera has that reflector box in it, right? So it's got that mirror, it's got a mirror box in it, it reflects light up into the viewfinder and all that kind of jazz, right? So full frame cameras are typically bigger. SLR cameras, not full frames. SLR cameras are typically bigger. Mirrorless systems take out that mirror box, so they're thinner, and they're generally lighter, and you have a digital representation through your viewfinder instead of actual light reflection, okay? So that's the biggest difference between full frame cameras and mirrorless. So they're smaller, and the best part about this is that generally mirrorless lenses are also smaller and lighter too. So mirrorless systems are spectacular. I love them. They are so very cool. Here is the trade-off with mirrorless systems. So mirrorless systems have only just started to go full frame, which is unbelievably exciting. So remember how I said I wanted to get that Nikon Z6? I want to get it because it is Nikon's full frame mirrorless camera, which is really, really cool. What I have right now is the full frame DSLR camera, well, one of theirs anyway, they have a few, okay? And I'd love to go mirrorless because, as you guys know, I love to travel. Traveling is one of my favorite things to do, and I don't want to cut around this massive bulky thing. Except that if I go for mirrorless, I have to change everything. Now, here's the thing with mirrorless systems. They are kind of the future of cameras. Okay, that's the way that we're going to head. That's the way all camera manufacturers are heading. Canon and Nikon still produce traditional DSLR cameras, and they will continue to do so, I think, probably for a good decade. Okay, and even when Canon and Nikon transition out of full DSLR cameras into totally mirrorless, there's going to be a thriving secondhand market for this equipment because they do create beautiful systems. Doesn't matter if they're big and bulky, they're still amazing. Okay. The second part of this is that right now, full frame mirrorless cameras are wickedly expensive. They're brand new to the market. They're really incredible technology. It's cutting edge at the moment. And yes, they cost a fortune. So here's my advice on full frame versus mirrorless. Now, just remember, guys, again, this is just advice. Do whatever you want at the end of the day. I'm only here to give you guys information. If you're going to go with the crop sensor route, okay, so if you're going to go with the slightly smaller sensor size, compact, smaller, cheaper cameras, right? Go mirrorless. Make the investment, buy a really good quality mirrorless camera, okay? I'm going to give you guys some suggestions in that download, that purchase guide that I'm going to send out afterwards. But like one of my all-time favorite ones is the Fujifilm X-T4. I think that is a spectacular system. I actually owned the X-T1 a while back. I loved that camera. It was so good. So yeah, go mirrorless. Buy a mirrorless crop sensor camera, okay? Get a really good quality one, make it mirrorless, and make it last, all right? If you're going with the full frame cameras, if money is not an object, go mirrorless. Why wouldn't you, right? I mean, they're amazing. They're gorgeous. The image quality is just as good, if not better, than traditional DSLRs. They're smaller, they're more compact. They have incredible lens choices. Go for it. Like seriously, just spend the 10 grand and buy the most amazing system you will ever own in your life, right? But unfortunately for most of us, there's a bit of a cap on how much we can spend. So if you're going to go full frame, highly suggest looking into the traditional DSLR cameras, okay? For Nikon, you're looking at the D750. You could go with the D850, but again, it's expensive and heavy, and at which point I would say just go mirrorless, okay? The D600 or the D750. The D600, they don't make as much anymore, so they're a bit harder to find. These are full frame cameras. The D750 is phenomenal, and it's actually one of the most compact DSLR cameras on the market, okay? Especially full frame ones, it's beautiful. On the Canon side of things, they make the most incredible full frame full frame camera. It's called the 6D, and it is beautiful. Like it's equally as good as the D750 on the Nikon side. So Canon 6D, Nikon D750, I would totally suggest going down those two routes. All right. If that's assuming you have a budget. Okay. Again, if you don't have a budget, then there are some exceptional full frame cameras out there. Canon has an amazing one. Sony has the Alpha 7 series. They are like some of the best cameras in the world. Nikon has the Z6 and the Z7, also incredible cameras, right? So lots of good choices there. Okay, let me just go back here because I got slightly off track as I do. Yeah. All right, so that's kind of, let me just summarize once more the breakdown of this. And again, this summary is going to be in the guide, okay? So you love photography and this is it. Buy a full frame camera, okay? If you love photography and you think I would love to be a little bit better at this maybe, or I'm just not quite ready to invest that level of money, buy a really good crop sensor. If you're buying a crop sensor camera, go mirrorless, right? They're about the same price as a good quality DSLR. They're smaller, they're more compact, they have incredible quality lens options. You'd be crazy not to, okay? If you're going to go full frame and money's no object, also go mirrorless because it's totally worth it, like 100% worth it. If money's an object, buy a traditional SLR camera. They are beautiful systems and you have some really awesome choices out there. All right, please let me know if I'm making sense so far, because I would love a little, let's just make sure I'm making sense. Somebody could just pop in the comments, yes, you're making sense. No, I'm totally and utterly lost. Yeah, okay, good. Thanks, Billy. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm breaking this down. And again, it's a bit easier to see visually, but I sort of wanted to give you guys the overview here first. Good. Thanks, Aylin. All right, thanks, Lorraine. Moving on. That's our two really big considerations. So now you've probably decided if you're going to go crop and mirrorless, or full frame and SLR, or mirrorless, you know, because some of us have lots of money, which is fantastic. In fact, we're all going to get there. Don't worry about it, guys. But yeah, so hopefully you've decided on your category of purchase now. All right, now we have to go into how do we choose which camera in that category to purchase. So there are lots of really important considerations. And again, I'm going to give you guys a checklist on this so you can just tick them off as we go. Certain cameras are going to do video. Certain cameras will not. If video is important, get a camera that does video and make sure it's a good quality video, because some cameras just put video capabilities in and they don't pay any attention to the quality of the video that they're creating. Okay, so if video is important, make sure you've got a camera that can do video and can probably do 4K. It'd be really great if you could get HD video out of your camera. Touchscreen or no touchscreen. Some cameras come with touchscreens, some cameras don't. I personally am such a klutz. A touchscreen camera for me would just be a disaster. I'd be forever touching things as yes. Sorry, Joan, I'll come back to that in just a second. That's a good question. Touchscreens and we do not mix. There is no mixing with touchscreens and I. So I would prefer a camera that doesn't come with a touchscreen. A lot of these cameras, you can turn the touchscreen off, but it's kind of a feature thing. Like, do you want it or do you not want it necessarily? Does it not matter? Lots of lens choices. So Joan, we're just going to stop here for a quick second because Joan just had a really great question. He said, did you mention that mirrorless bodies are not compatible with SLR lenses? And I didn't. Okay, I kind of made an assumption on this one, but let me talk quickly through this so that you guys understand how it's sort of going to play out. So no, generally SLR lenses are not compatible with mirrorless systems. They actually generally have a different connection point. Okay, you can get an adapter that will allow you to adapt certain lenses to certain cameras. And apparently these adapters are really fantastic. So for example, with the new Nikon full frame, sorry, I talk about Nikon just because that's where I do my research mostly for my own personal preferences. But with the new mirrorless systems, most of them come with an adapter that will allow you to put old school DSLR lenses on them. However, I'm not totally convinced that they're that good. I haven't actually tried it yet. Okay, so this is just conjecture. I would prefer just to buy the right lenses for the right body. Okay, and in the same breath here, crop sensor lenses do not do well on full frame cameras and vice versa. Okay, so my suggestion is that once you guys settle on the system you want, sell the things that don't work and use that money to buy less really good quality lenses. Okay. Make sure they work for the body that you have. And this is kind of the other part where it's like, choose the body that you're going to work with for the next sort of 5 to 10 years, right? I totally agree, Miriam. Totally defeats the purpose of going with a lighter system if then you have to put an adapter in there, right? Go with a lighter system and invest in that system is sort of my feeling on this. I like to keep my lenses and my systems the same so that everything is compatible. You know, the last thing you want to have to do is be out in the middle of somewhere spectacular and fiddling around with adapters, and it's another thing that can break when you're on holidays. And then where are you going to get an adapter from in the middle of the Czech Republic or something, right? Like it becomes a much bigger deal. So my suggestion is that once you settle on your system here, once you settle on which road you're going to take, sell everything that doesn't work with that road and start investing in the stuff that does. You will be surprised at how little you need to get a really good system going. And I'm not joking, it's literally a body and 1, maybe 2 lenses. And this can last you for a really long time. It can last you for as long as you need until you have enough money to buy the 2nd lens, the 3rd lens, the 4th lens, anything else that you want, okay? Joan, does that help? hopefully. Okay, I'll wait for Joan to get back to me on that one. But then this is another consideration about, awesome, good. This is another consideration about which camera system to go with, right? You need to make sure that there's enough lens choices. So if you're going to go with a crop sensor camera, part of the reason I suggest that you go with mirrorless is that a lot of camera companies are not producing as much in the way of SLRs, like traditional DSLRs. So for example, Sony, not really producing any traditional DSLR equipment anymore. Fujifilm doesn't do it, Olympus isn't doing it. Canon and Nikon are kind of the only places where you're going to get a good selection of lenses for crop sensor cameras. And even those guys, my guess is they're going to be spending the next sort of 5 to 10 years phasing that equipment out, right? As I said, there will be a thriving secondhand market for it, no doubt about it. But if you're looking towards yourself in the future, do your future self a favor and make sure that you're purchasing from a company that has lots of options for you, okay? Because you're going to want to be able to pick and choose exactly what you want at that point. Okay. Another consideration is if the camera has dual card slots. So these are your SD cards that you pop in. Best thing I ever did was buy a camera with 2 card slots because I never run out of space. And if I want to, I have a backup. And the best thing is that when you have dual card slots, you can twin it. So you can have an automatic backup, which means that when your camera writes the photo to the card, it's writing it to both cards. So if one of them is corrupted, the other one's still working. I love that. Or you can just have an overflow. So you get double the space. So if you buy 2 128 gig cards, you have 256 gigabytes of storage in your camera at all times, which is a ton. It's enough of a small computer, right? So loved having dual card slots. Autofocus options, you need to think, this is one of the things that drives me crazy about the D750. So if this is my entire frame, then the Nikon has only a certain selection of points that are generally in the middle of the frame for my autofocus. Okay, this is really annoying because I quite like compositions where my subject is like way up here in a corner somewhere and I can't get my focus point to go there. So I have to lock my focus and recompose my shot. And that's fine if my subject is still, but it's not great if my subject is moving, right? So make sure you're choosing a camera that has lots of good focus points. Most crop sensor cameras have like edge to edge autofocus point selection. So you can focus all the way up in this corner, you could focus all the way down in this corner, or anything in between, okay? So it's just something to consider. Again, it wasn't a deal breaker for us, right? So, but it is something that does kind of annoy me about the system that we have right now. Resolution, okay? So yes, pixels matter, but not that much, okay? Resolution is the kind of thing you will notice in cameras that are a decade old, right? So it is an important consideration in your camera, but do not hang your choice up on how many megapixels it has, okay? Some of the best cameras don't have as higher pixels as what some of the slightly less good cameras have. Do not allow that to be the one deciding factor for your camera choice, okay? It's not that important. It is, but it's not that important, all right? Weight and size, obviously these are huge considerations. Weight, because you don't want to have to carry the damn thing around on your back, but also size, because it's going to dictate what kind of camera bag you can get. Okay, my Fujifilm fitted into a sling bag, which was like this big. It's fantastic, and a Nikon requires much. It's like a way big difference. Okay, especially because when you consider the fact that mirrorless lenses are also smaller, suddenly you've got a much more compact kit. Okay, ISO performance. So, right. Sorry, Miriam, I am back here with you again. Okay, so Miriam, my suggestion, yes, go full frame. And mirrorless will become less expensive in the future. Mirrorless full frame systems, they will come down in price, but also your full frame DSLR cameras, they will be around for a while. Okay, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So, you know, if you go down the full frame DSLR option, sort of like what we have right now, you'll be able to use those systems for a very long time. So if that's the way you go for now, you'll be totally great. And in 10 years time, you'll have lots more money and you'll be able to go and buy the mirrorless full frames because they'll be a lot cheaper as well. So it'll be like a bonus. Okay, ISO performance is a really big one. So how noisy is your camera at certain ISOs? So this is one of the advantages of full frame cameras is that typically they have better what's called noise reduction engines. This means that at 3200 ISO on a full frame camera should be less noisy than 3200 on a crop sensor. Okay, so you should be able to find information about this. This is more opinion-based, just so you know. I don't think they generally come out with statistics, and if they do, they're probably impossible to understand. But when you start looking online for reviews and for comments about it, what you're going to notice is people will mention the noise reduction engine. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connectivity. This is a really big one. This is kind of one of these new features. I think it came out with a really big splash, and since then people have realized it's not as desirable as they first thought. And part of the reason that it's not as desirable is that for you to, so this is wirelessly transmitting your photos from your camera through to your computer, so you don't have to have the cord, okay? The biggest issue with this, and I don't know if they've sort of fixed this yet, but the biggest issue with this is generally that you have to have a different program installed on your computer to be able to accept the wireless transmissions. And that is all well and good, except that most of us don't use that program to edit and store our photos, right? Generally, they're just pretty bare bones sort of programs. They're just for importing the images off your screen or off your camera. So once you get the images off your camera and they're into this funky software on your computer, then you have to export them from the software and import them somewhere else. Or you have to drag and drop them into something else, okay? So while it sounds like it's a really cool thing, and it could be absolutely perfect. Yeah, so as Miriam said, just use the wireless for the first time recently, and it's great for posting images. It's really quick if you just want to grab them and go. But if you actually want to do something with them, then you have to figure out your process for that. So it might be worth it and it might not be worth it. It kind of depends on what kind of photographer you are. I like it quick and simple. So I just plug my SD card into the computer and go for it, right? Go straight into Lightroom and do exactly what I want to do with it from there. But that's sort of what you're looking for. Your camera will either have it or it won't have it. It's pretty simple. GPS. Now, yes, Joan, you're absolutely right. So Joan's Nikon D3300 doesn't have the Bluetooth functionality, okay? But there is an adapter you can plug in to get Bluetooth functionality, but it's really pretty unstable. So it doesn't transfer photos reliably or particularly well. And I kind of feel that way about most of it, really. It's not one of those selling features for me, but I do understand why it is important for some people, if that makes sense. GPS though, this is one I would totally get, and I'll tell you why, because GPS is a really neat thing. When you import your photos into Lightroom, if you have GPS enabled on your camera, it will actually drag and drop. It'll automatically import all your photos onto that map in Lightroom, which is really cool. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the next time you open up your Lightroom software, click on map, and if you have GPS on your camera, all of your photos should show up on that map where they were taken in the world, which is really cool. Okay, totally gimmicky. I don't know when I'd ever actually use it, but it is kind of fun for looking back and being like, oh yeah, I remember those photos when I was over here and I was doing this and stuff. So you can also get an adapter that plugs in for GPS. We tried this with our Nikon D750 at one point. Didn't work particularly well, so we've just given up on that for now. But you know, it is really cool, and I think if we were looking for another camera system again, I'd probably make sure it has GPS just because it's kind of fun. It's a bit gimmicky, but really fun. Weather sealing. So you have to make sure that your camera can handle the conditions. Now, most good cameras these days, pretty much all the models you're going to be looking at, they will have good weather sealing, but you just want to make sure it can handle a rainstorm, it can handle a dust storm, and it's not going to corrode with salt water at the beach, right? That's a good question too. I know you sent that to me, Miriam, but I'm going to put that out to the group. Yeah, so weather sealing, make sure that it can handle the conditions that you're in. And then battery life, right? So you want to make sure that you have a camera that has decent battery life. I'm going to disclaimer, this is purely for personal preference. I hate battery packs. I hate them so much because they're bulky, they add so much extra weight, they completely defeat the purpose of having this beautiful streamlined camera. And then you go and put this massive bulky battery pack on it, and it just seems so retarded and redundant to me. Sorry, that was very forceful. If you have a battery pack on your camera, you're amazing and you're doing a great job. One of the drawbacks with battery packs is typically they're AA batteries. So you actually have to bring batteries to fill your battery pack, which is again extra weight. My advice when it comes to batteries is this: buy 1 or 2 extra OEM, so this is original manufacturing standards batteries. This way, you pop them in your camera bag, they're light, they're small, and they charge with the charger that you're bringing with you. And then you always have 2 or 3 backup batteries or 1 or 2 backup batteries. And I say buy the manufactured, your official camera brand batteries because they are more expensive, but we bought an OEM one and they don't last for very long. Okay, so ours is like going through this phase now where you put it into the camera and it just randomly stops working even though it's fully charged. Miriam, you have 3, you're a champion. It's the way to go. Seriously, don't worry about the battery packs. Just go and buy a couple of extra batteries. You'll be happy for the rest of your life. Again, total opinion. So Miriam asked me here quickly, does which camera brand you choose affects portraiture, or is it all about the operator? Okay, so I would say that the camera body itself has very little impact depending on has very little impact on the quality of the photos depending on what you want to do. So if you want to be in portrait photography, you could use the same camera body as somebody who wants to be in landscapes. The only time I would say it makes a difference is if you're going to be doing this professionally, then I would invest in some of the really top quality stuff. Like I wouldn't take the 750, I would take the 850 from Nikon. I wouldn't take the 6D from Canon, I would take the 5D Mark IV or even the 1D from Canon, okay? I would spend the extra money on those really good quality systems. But beyond that, the type of photography you're doing and the quality of shots you're gonna get will come down to the lenses you choose and then the operator, obviously, you're absolutely right. It comes down to how you use it, right? But when it comes to choosing cameras, choose it based on the quality of the image that you're going to get and the type of photography that you want to do in terms of weight and size, right? Like if you love traveling, you love hiking, maybe go with something smaller. But I would still say exactly the same things whether you're looking at portrait photography or landscape photography. My recommendations would be exactly the same when it comes to this body of work, if that makes sense. All right, so da-di-da-di-da. All right, we're coming to the end here, team. I know I've been talking a lot. How do you make a choice? Now I've given you kind of a bit of a flow chart and do you want this? Yes. Do you want this? No. Okay, great, fantastic. Now, how do you actually come down to that final decision about what it is that you're going to buy? There are a few ways to go, and I would suggest that you do all 3 of these. Okay, the first thing is that hop online. Search for, if you're going to go for the best crop sensor mirrorless system, search for best crop sensor mirrorless system, and it's going to come up with a list. And on that list, it's going to have a review of each of these fantastic top 10 cameras that you could purchase. And it's going to have a pros and cons list, and it's going to have a rating on it, a star rating. It's going to be great. And all of that information is right there at your fingertips. So go online, and I'm not joking, search for best crop sensor mirrorless camera, best full frame traditional DSLR camera, and it's going to come up with those lists for you, okay? They even have like example pricing on there. It's unbelievable, right? Like there's a huge wealth of information online about these cameras, okay? And I use that as the starting basis of, what are the 3 that I'm really going to sort of invest in here? What am I really going to look at, right? Once I sort of come up with those 3, at least I have somewhere to go and do some more research. And then you can dig into each of the top 3 camera models that fit within your budget, that fit within your style, that fit, that sort of fit within a couple of the other things we've talked about, right? Like maybe having GPS is really important. Maybe having your touch screen is really important. Those considerations will help you whittle down to your top 3, okay? And then you can go and do a little bit more of a deep dive into each of these 3, all right? And that's really going to help you then to sort of distill down. You can look at some example photos from them. You can read into some more reviews. You can look at consumer reviews because they're different to professional reviews again. I do generally find the reviews are super helpful, and those stars are just, there's nothing quite more visual than just looking to see if it's a 5-star or a 3-star. If it's a 3-star, it's probably not worth it. Most of the best cameras these days are going to be 4.5 or 5-star. So that's just sort of something, if it's a 3-star, I'd probably just cross it off your list and move on. If you want to look into why, there's probably a really good reason for it. But once you have that, then you can take this information down to your local camera store. And even if you're not planning on buying your camera from them, I'll get into this in a second, they are unbelievably helpful. They will let you hold the camera. They will let you put it in your hands, and that tactile feel is so important. The reason we went with a Nikon system over a Canon system is because I have tiny hands, and Nikon has a more aggressive grip. So I can actually hold on to a Nikon better than I can hold on to a Canon. And at the end of the day, that's what actually pushed us into the Nikon route instead of the Canon route. Okay, so it's totally going to depend on your feel, what you like to hold in your hand, how the weight feels, that kind of stuff. So that's a really good indication of which of your top 3 systems you'll like better. Your camera store will also be able to pop on a couple of lenses that you've got floating around in the back of your brain, and you'll actually be able to take a photo with them, which is really, really important, but also just really fun. Going camera shopping is a ton of fun. Okay, if you are going to go down to your local camera store, and this is a bit of a side note, even if you don't decide to buy it from them, please consider supporting them in any way you can. Leave them a review, post about them online, buy your accessories from them, purchase a lens from them. what you guys will find, and this is really interesting, is that your local camera store will be almost as competitive as buying online from a place like Amazon. Because with Amazon, you always have to wrap in taxes, you have to wrap in duties and fees, you have to wrap in shipping, and sometimes it's not in the right currency. So you will be shocked to see just how close the prices are between your local camera store and buying it online. Okay, if it comes down to the matter of an extra $50 or $100, please go with your local camera store, okay? These guys are not going to survive unless they have support from people like us. And these are our friends and family, right? So make sure you're heading down there and actually supporting them in any way that you can. Once you've done that, you've probably got a pretty good understanding. Maybe you've whittled it down to your top 2. That's when you hop on our groups. It's when you hop on the alumni page. It's when you hop on our community. Pose the question out there. Be like, I'm looking between the D750 and the Canon 6D. What do you guys think? You know, and we can weigh in on it. We can give you our suggestions. You can answer, you can ask your specific questions. I wouldn't come onto the groups and just be like, I want a new camera. What should I buy? That's like massively open-ended. You probably won't get a lot of really great help from that. But once you whittle it down and you've got some specific questions about which one you want to go with, that's when you put it out and you say, hey, I'd love a little bit of opinion. Does anybody own this one? What do you think of it? Does anybody own this one? Has anybody had this discussion in their own brain before, right? So yeah, definitely hop on there and ask your questions. All right, here. Now, that's pretty much all the information that I'm going to throw your way for now. Again, we've got this really cool camera guide coming out. I'm going to have all the information we talked about today, a couple of my favorite cameras in each of the categories. Just keep in mind that as time goes on, those cameras are going to change. They will not be the most recent model anymore. There's always new cameras coming out. But take some of the key takeaways from that. Why is it so good? And yeah, that should help you guys to figure it out. There's also going to be some spaces in there for you guys to jot your notes down, keep all of your thoughts in the one spot, hopefully do a comparison where you can see all of the pros and cons in one space and make a decision. Because it's like, I totally get it. The world is awash with different things. My only other tip for you guys when it comes to buying a camera team, please do not let indecision stop you. Yes, there are hundreds of camera systems out there. And yes, there are probably lots of really incredible ones. And no, none of them will have everything that you want. You will always have to make a compromise on 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 different things. But please, 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 do not let that indecision stop you from just making a decision. You've got to make a choice. You have to get that camera in your hands and you have to start taking photos, okay? I promise you, whatever you choose, right? If you've thought this through, you followed the steps, I promise that whatever you choose is going to be fantastic. And if you change your mind, it's okay. There is a wonderful secondhand market for this stuff. You can sell it and you can start again, okay? So please make a choice, get out there, buy your camera and start having some fun with it, because there is nothing more exciting than unboxing a camera, even if it's a secondhand one. It's so exciting, okay? So please don't let indecision stop you. Do I have any more questions? Is there anything else? This is your time, guys. So please make sure that you're popping your questions in one of the chats. If you're on Zoom, you can pop it in the Zoom chat. If you're on Facebook Live there, you can pop it on the Facebook chat. I am hoping that I'm getting everybody's comments here. I just want to make sure. All right, I think we're doing pretty well. Awesome, you're very welcome, Lorraine. Now, a couple of other things before you guys go, before we sign off today, email me with your questions. I am literally always happy to help. Okay, the second thing is, I'm very excited because we're going to be announcing a brand new online photography program that is launching in January. And I am so excited about this because it's going to be fantastic. So here's the deal. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, make sure you're on it because most of the details are going to be coming out through there. Okay. The second thing is that you should stay tuned because in about 2 weeks time, I'm going to be sending out a special deal for all of my founding members. So if you buy it now, you get to help me figure out all of the extra details that go into this because it's going to be lots of fun. And then you'll be on board sort of first up for the program starting in January. It's going to be amazing and I can't wait. So it's time to get excited about that, which is very cool. Perfect. So now again, if you guys have extra choices, please make sure that you are just ask. I'm super happy. I know there's lots of different numbers, all the numbering systems of each, all of the numbering systems of each of the systems is totally different. So they can be confusing and they can be a little bit bizarre. And I hope that today helped you sort of figure out which way you're going to go. And I hope that your online research will help. But again, if it comes down to it and you're like, I'm so lost, can you just give me the top 3 choices in this kind of category? I want to buy a crop sensor mirrorless. What do you suggest? Just email me. I'm super happy to help. Pop it in the community page, all of that kind of jazz. We are always happy to give you guys sort of the information that you need. All right, so I am going to sign off and hopefully see you guys all very, very soon. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. So talk to you soon. Peace out, people.